Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the principles of the United States Constitution. And let us remember that the United States Constitution is the document that actually creates the government of the United States. And remember, it is version number two. The original was the Articles of Confederation, where we left off last time on the last episode of the Constitution. You had a group of farmers that were angry that they were being taxed to really pay for the results of the American Revolution. So they rise up in Shays' Rebellion and start to fight against the state of Massachusetts. That battle it ends up being a good 1,500 or so people that take up arms against the state of Massachusetts. And the state of Massachusetts really doesn't have the energy or the wherewithal to be able to put down the overall insurrection. Eventually, it is put down by a private militia, and what they have figured out is that the Articles of Confederation is essentially an alliance between 13 independent states, and it's not really working well at all. So there's a call for a new constitutional convention and to create a stronger idea of national government. And so what comes out of this is the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution is broken down as follows. There are areas of the United States Constitution that talk about specific parts of the US government, and those are called articles. Okay. You also have 27 amendments that are actually proposed changes in the United States Constitution, and these changes come about between basically the last amendment was in the early 1990s. The first 10 amendments describe how a citizen is protected from the United States government. Those first 10 amendments were passed with the ratification of the Constitution on the insistence of Thomas Jefferson, and those are known as the Bill of Rights. So when somebody says the Bill of Rights, what they really mean are the first 10 changes that were proposed to the Constitution of the United States. Remember, an amendment is simply a change. So let's go over some of the basic principles that the United States Constitution is really delving in. Number one, popular sovereignty. You know what sovereignty is? It's ultimate power within one's own borders. Now, popular is just the idea of the people that actually hold the ultimate authority. All right. States get to elect their own governments, people get to select those overall governments, and people get to select who actually represents them in all their local, state, and national governments. So that's the concept of popular sovereignty. All right. The people hold the ultimate power. Number two, the idea of limited government. The whole point of the American Revolution was to guard against a monarch. Fine, we got that. So the government needs to limit the power that's actually given to the government and especially the chief executive, the president, within the Constitution of the United States. More importantly, the Constitution actually tells how leaders can be removed and that the citizens are protected against arbitrary government punishment. Of course, we've had attempted removals of four presidents: Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump through the processes of impeachment. The next theory is the idea of federalism, that there's going to be a division of power. Power is shared between a state government and, excuse me, the national government and of various state governments. Some powers both have, like states can tax and the national government can tax, but ultimately the supreme power is the national government. Now, that means, by the way, the national government needs to have laws that actually override state governments, and they can't just arbitrarily say a state law is bad and that's how it goes. It doesn't work like that. Okay, but power in federalism is shared between state governments and regional governments, national governments and regional governments, otherwise known as state governments. Theory number four: you have to have permission of the people to actually rule. And this is the idea behind the concept of a representative democracy, a republic. The people approve who's going to govern them based on elections, and the ultimate power in doing that is the act of voting. You have to have free and fair elections. They need to be consistent. They can't be delayed. They can't be manipulated or overtly influenced by government officials. The ultimate power comes from the people. And how did the power consent that they can be governed? By having representatives that are elected through the process of voting. Now, The next one is the concept of separation of powers. No one in government holds too much power. Now, normally, the one they're trying to stop, the branch of government, is the executive, because the chief executive historically is the one that tries to take hold and maintain power, sometimes illegally. Okay. The legislative branch actually makes the laws. The executive branch carries out the laws, and the judicial branch interprets the laws. This is the basis of separation of powers. Remember, uh, the Baron de Montesquieu said, "This is how you stop a monarch from becoming too powerful: is you take the power within government and put it somewhere else and allow them to balance out each other." So we have the Supreme Court building, the Capitol that holds the Congress, and of course the White House that contains the president. Independent branches of government, so no one can become too powerful. Then you describe within the Constitution in Article 1, what do these branches of government actually do? Well, in Article 1, the legislative branch's primary job is to make laws, and that is done in the Senate and the House of Representatives, the two houses of the United States Congress. They propose bills. Hi, Bill. And then that bill eventually will become a law. Now, who are our representatives? Well, every state has two senators. The current senators of California are Senior Senator Alex Padilla and Junior Senator LaFonza Butler. LaFonza Butler is a temporary senator uh, from Dianne Feinstein's death. She will be replaced in 2024. So they represent the entire state of California. Also in California are a variety of districts. These are districts where each um, district is represented by somebody in the House of Representatives. So Jared Huffman represents the second district of California. So basically, Del Norte, Trinity, Humboldt, Mendocino, part of Sonoma, and all of Marin County are represented by Jared Huffman. And these are roughly similar sized populations. Who decides these districts, like how they're shaped? It is done independently in California. It is not done by any partisan legislature. Okay. Now, Article 2 talks about the executive branch. The executive branch, pretty clearly, is the President of the United States, and their chief task is to enforce or implement the law. Okay. The current President of the United States, obviously, Joe Biden. Joe Biden will be running against Donald Trump in 2024 for the chief executive branch. The final branch is talked about in Article 3. And Article 3 talks about the Supreme Court and every other federal court. Their primary job is to interpret the law, but they also do something called judicial review. And the judicial review is simply asking the question, is an act constitutional? So they have the ability under judicial review to tell either the president or Congress, I'm sorry, but your act is unconstitutional and therefore illegal and cannot be done. It's super important in a democracy that a court has the ability to overturn decisions that are unconstitutional from the president, Congress, or states. So judicial review is simply asking, is the action or law constitutional? Here are the current Supreme Court justices. We have Amy Coney Barrett. We have um, Neil Gorsuch. We have Brett Kavanaugh. We have Ketanji Jackson Brown. We have Sonia Sotomayor. We have Clarence Thomas. We have John Roberts. We have Samuel Alito. And we have Elena Kagan. Remember that these Supreme Court justices, just like any other federal court justices, are in the Supreme Court for life. They are there for life. And to rule on a case, you, first of all, 4 justices must agree to hear a Supreme Court case, and then you must have a majority of justices to win a Supreme Court case. Like one of the most important parts of the Constitution is the idea that these 3 branches of government can check and balance each other. They all have powers to stop the other from doing things and gaining too much power. It's an important part of the constitutional model. And we'll get into greater depths of the checks and balances and what they are in other sections. Just remember, Every branch has the power to do something to prevent the other branch from becoming too powerful. That's the concept of a check and balance. Rule of law, super important, as we have mentioned in a democracy, that no one at all is above the law, and the Constitution is ultimately the supreme law of the land. Okay. No person, especially the chief executive, is all powerful, and no one can simply get complete and total immunity from the law. The law of the land is the Constitution. When you swear on the Bible or whatever book you are when you take office, your job is to uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It is not, the loyalty does not go to a person. The loyalty in the United States goes to the Constitution and its ideas. Now, ultimately, the Constitution is tested during what's called the Whiskey Rebellion to pay off, again, war debt, having to deal with the Revolutionary War. Uh, Washington decides to pass a tax on whiskey. And of course, farmers grow really, really angry because the grain that's used to make whiskey is essentially increasing in price, and it's not really helping them out. They do things like, you've probably seen, tar and feather tax collectors that come and try to get the whiskey tax, and there are riots in the street. Unlike Shays' Rebellion this time, though, we actually have a United States military. And the military under George Washington, who personally goes out, confronts the rebellion out in the countryside, and eventually successfully puts it down, showing again that the unity that the United States government brings under the US Constitution works. And going forward, we have a much more stable government.